Hello guys, welcome back to Archive Horizon. In this video, I like to talk about Vidya Celestial Swan's weapon mechanics, her weapons comparison, the advantages and disadvantages of her abilities, team composition, manifestation priorities, and logistic talent priorities. The weapon I'm gonna compare is Starlit Truth and Gearlock. I will start by giving a quick explanation about her weapon mechanics first. The difference between Starlit Truth and Gearlock is obvious. Gearlock only focuses on providing a huge amount of generic buff, which can be easily cause diminishing return, while Starlit Truth, besides it can provide a large amount of generic buff, it can also apply damage taken debuff, which is very valuable debuff that is less prone to diminishing return. Additionally, if Vidya uses Gearlock, her support skill duration can only last for 12 seconds due to insufficient skill energy, while if Vidya uses Starlit Truth, her support skill duration can last forever due to the weapon can provide skill energy regeneration at the same speed as her support skill consumption rate. I think that's all about the weapon skill. Vidya Celestial Swan stat I use for this DPS calculation is Manifestation 2 stat. The weapon stat for this comparison is Tier 2 Starlit Truth, Tier 1 Starlit Truth, and Tier 5 Gearlock. The Logistic talent has 21% attack percent talent and 222.6 alignment index talent, while the main DPS I use is Manifestation 2 Nerida as the DPS comparison, but please note that I use Nerida in here doesn't mean that Vidya is Nerida's dedicated support, so please don't be mistaken, because Vidya is the most powerful versatile support that ever exists so far. First of all, I like to talk about Vidya's potential as a main DPS in case you wanna play her on the field. So here is Vidya's shooting DPS and here is her total DPS to a single target. Very low, isn't it? Yeah, very low. So don't ever use her as a main DPS unless you just want to have fun with her standard skill, because her standard skill might be very useful in Defense Line 0 game mode or Endless Battle game mode to interrupt the enemy's movement. As for her weapon comparison, if we were to ignore the downside of Vidya's free-to-play weapon that cannot maintain her support skill for an unlimited duration, by assuming that we manage to clear the battle within 12 seconds, the difference between Tier 1 signature weapon and the free-to-play weapon can extend from 11% to 13%, which is actually not that significant. However, if your battle takes more than 12 seconds, there will be a moment when Vidya's support skill enters cooldown. That is when the gap will increase significantly between both of these weapons. This is the comparison if the battle takes approximately 20 seconds and causes Vidya's support skill to enter cooldown for once. The gap between the free-to-play weapon and the Tier 1 signature weapon jumped to 40%. Is that big? Yes, that is very big difference. If your battle takes more than 30 seconds, then her support skill will enter another cooldown and so on. The longer the battle, the more her support skill enter cooldown, the larger the gap between both of these weapons will be. So it can exceed 40% if your battle lasts more than 30 seconds. Now the problem is, should you pull Vidya Celestial Swan as well as her signature weapon? Yes, you don't need to doubt about that. Vidya Celestial Swan as a versatile support operative has some very useful advantages and very less disadvantages. Vidya's advantages is she is the first support operative that can provide every kind of buff with a very few limitations. She can provide a large amount of generic buff, flat attack buff, attack percent buff, resist threat, damage taken, and defense threat debuff. Resist threat, damage taken, and defense threat debuff are rare debuffs that usually can significantly enhance your main DPS damage output. Not only her support skill, her ultimate skill also can be used to inflict some defense threat and conditional true damage without consuming any ultimate energy at all. If Vidya uses her signature weapon, her support skill can last forever and very difficult to remove. Only few boss can force removing her support skill, for example Theta Inversion and Woody when they transform between phases.
体験するこの汚れた偽物めが 理性を徹底的に捨てたのか。創造主はお前らに人類を進化に導く。
And this annoying lizard. So unlike Moxir Shadow's cabinet, which can be removed when the enemy become invulnerable, Vidya's clone remain intact during the boss invulnerable phase. This makes her clone more reliable than Moxir Shadow's cabinet. While the downside of Vidya's ability is that, in order to fully utilize her buff, the other support operatives element must match the main DPS element. For example, if your main DPS is electric element, then the other support operative should also be electric element. If your main DPS is a frost element, then the other support operative should also be frost element, and so on. However, you don't need to follow this rule if your support operative skill doesn't deal damage. For example, Phoenix Starshine support skill, Ether the Cup passive healing, or Marian Riptide as an off-field support. What will happen if you don't follow this mono-element rule for the other two operative? Then Vidya's support skill clone might change the resist threat element when there is another element type of damage hitting the same target. Here is for example. So whenever she changes the element, the flat attack buff from her Dewa skill and the attack percent buff from her third manifestation will be removed. Additionally, her support skill resist threat will also reset its stack. In summary, the impact is significant, especially if the element changes more than once. While the second downside is that she is signature weapon reliant due to her free-to-play weapon being unsuitable for long-term battle. And the generic buff its profile also very prone to diminishing return. As for her team composition, Vidya Celestial Swan can be put in any squad as long as the other support operatives share the same element with the main DPS. Or the other support operative skill doesn't deal damage, for example, Penny Starshine support skill, Ether the Cup passive healing, and Marian Riptide as an off-field support. Additionally, due to Vidya can provide resist threat, damage taken, and defense threat debuff, her improvement on any DPS that lacks of this kind of debuff can be very significant. The operative that lacks of this kind of debuff, for example, is Sirius Kusana, Nita Pulse, Haru Absconditus, Chensing Ethereal Cloud, Katia Blue Bolt, and the standard operative. So the conclusion is, her tier 2 signature weapon is 58% stronger than the free-to-play weapon, while her tier 1 signature weapon is 40% stronger than the free-to-play weapon. This percentage can keep going up the longer the battle lasts. Therefore, I conclude that Vidya needs at least tier 1 signature weapon due to it can completely change her support skill duration into an unlimited duration. However, is Vidya a must pull and invest operative? Yes. She is the most flexible and useful support operative so far. So I assure you, don't hesitate, just pull. But I still need to remind you that the next version is anniversary, so maybe you should have a proper discussion with your wallet on how to survive the next couple of months. As for Vidya's manifestation, the spike occurs in Manifestation 3 and Manifestation 5, so just invest as high as possible based on your capabilities. I usually prefer to invest until Manifestation 3. For the Logistic talent priority, attack percent has the highest priority, alignment index is the second, but if your Vidya use free-to-play weapon, then you can change the alignment index talent with skill has talent to reduce the support skill cooldown. While the third talent is useless because her support skill doesn't deal damage, and her ultimate skill deals true damage which is not affected by elemental damage buff, so any talent is fine. Unless you want to use her as a main DPS for fun, then you should probably get Chaos Element to boost her damage a little bit. Alright, I think that's all from me, thank you for watching, see you next time, cheers.